One of the driving forces in addiction is denial. Denial is a part of the disease of addiction in that way that it affects how you should reach the person behind, and you really need to do that. So everybody denies. So if you take Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith on the street and you ask them, are you envious? And probably they're going to say, no, not particularly. Or if you ask someone, are you greedy? And they say, no, I'm not really. Others are, you know. So everything that affects your self-worth or how you look at yourself and your self-esteem, probably you will deny it in one form or the other. So one of the strongest driving forces in addiction is denial. And you really need to understand this. So I'm going to talk about the psychology of denial and psychology of addiction. But I have to explain first that all those things that affect our self-esteem or self-worth is based on a feeling that most people don't really want to feel, and that's shame. So shame is underlying the denial, and we really need to understand this, that if you are going to admit that you have a disease or admit that you have addiction or alcoholism or gambling, then you really need to understand that the shame is underlying that, and no one wants to feel that feeling. No one wants to feel unworthy or feel that you have a low self-esteem. So probably they will deny the problem. So to understand this, I have to take a couple of examples. For example, if someone dies or if you have a deadly disease, the denial steps in to cover up the pain and to put it into pieces, or you take it in little by little like this, like a filter. So you need also the denial as a protection, as a human being. Because if someone stepped in here and said, Michael, your daughter is dead or your son is dead, that's the most thing that I don't want to feel. So to take in the truth about this, I need the denial to ease the pain. To ease the pain. So it's very important to have it as well, because it protects you. But when the denial steps in to protect things that are unhealthy for you or is dangerous for you, then it's really bad for the person or the patient or whoever has the denial. When I was new in the game of therapy, I worked in a treatment center, and at the same time there was a big accident out in the Baltic Sea with a ferry that went under, and 900 people died. So we had groups, grief groups, and for relatives and friends that lost someone in that process, and there was many people affected by this. And some of the parents and the people around, they didn't want to admit that their child had gone under, or the relative or so had drowned. And they only put like 5 or 6 rescue boats in the sea, and it was cold water, and still they didn't want to take in that the person had drowned. So they were, even for the glimpse of a hope, that they swam to Letland or to Lithuania or Finland. So instead of taking it in to protect their pain. Some people, they really got angry. So they got angry at the authorities. So they wrote letters, and they just to take in the pain. So a part of the denial or the grief process is the anger and not admitting anything, you know. And some of the diseases that are lethal or chronic and so on, it has the same patterns. For example, some people that get cancer or HIV and so on, they deny they have the disease, and some diseases is mimicking addiction. So some people, when they come to the doctor, for example, they say, the doctor says, okay, you have cancer, you need a chemotherapy and you need a radiation and so on, and they probably will say, yes, heal me. But some people that, for example, have diabetes, they say you have to go home, you have to change your diet, you have to stop eating sugar, you need to eat healthy foods, you need to exercise, and they go home. And what do they do? They don't do anything. They take the insulin, but they don't change their lifestyle. And probably they will die beforehand or lose a leg or eyesight or whatever. The consequences are not to change. So there is a denial even in regular diseases. Or you have a heart problem, they say the same thing, you have to change your lifestyle, you have to stop smoking, you have to do this and that, and they go home and do nothing. And probably they will die of heart failure or something else. And we encountered exactly the same problem when it comes to addiction. Exactly the same problem. They come to us and we say we work in a certain method, in a certain way that we are talking about total abstinence. If you are an addict, you are an addict. If you are an alcoholic, you are an alcoholic. If you are a gambler, you have to stop gambling. You have to total abstinence. So the remedy or the medicine is to take everything away. And this is sometimes too hard to take in and too hard to comprehend. So they rather deny their problem because it's a social disease in a way. And the shame is underlying, so they don't want to change because they want to be normal, they want to be like anybody else. But the thing is, when you have alcoholism or addiction or gambling, you are not like anybody else. You have a brain disease or a disease that tells you that the poison is the remedy. So in the denial, you almost kill yourself. The thing is also that the more intelligent you are, the more complicated systems for denial you have. The explanations, the justifications, and all of that is more complicated and more refined. And schooling and academic degrees doesn't help either, because you think you know. You think you have the answer. I have psychiatrists in treatment. I have nurses, doctors, psychologists, social workers. They think they know, but they don't really know. They can't see themselves because of the denial. And the denial is on two levels. Now we are talking Freud. Now we're talking Carl Jung. Now we're talking real basic psychology. We have two levels. It's like an iceberg. The top of the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, is your conscious denial. You say to yourself, for example, that, okay, I have a problem and I know how to deal with it. I have control. I can stop when I want. I don't really not that bad. I'm not like the guys that are in the street. I'm not like him, or she is worse than me, or he is less than I am, and I don't understand. He think he has a problem. So I always find an intellectual explanation and how I can or project my problems on outer problems, like it's the stress at the work, it's my relationship, it's the job, it's my children or whatever. So that's an intellectual level of denial. But the underlying is the emotional denial. What's really going on. And it's like a layer in between. It's like a stop. And with the drug or your gambling or your drinking, on top of that is like having the lid on. And when we take that away, because we have to do that, we have to take it away. And we are really cruel in a way, because we take the numbness of your activity or the substance, we take it away, so you can't numb your feelings anymore. And then we give assignments and one-to-one conversations and therapy and lectures and films or meetings like AA or NA, we send them to that, for example. Then we're really breaking through the denial, the layer, the lid is lifted. And then all the feelings that's been underlying on an unconscious level. And those are the feelings. And we really need to reach that. For example, today I had a woman gambling, and she came in contact with the sadness of the whole thing, what happened to her. And one of the things is that the patients or the person really need to grieve the loss of alcohol, leave the loss of gambling, leave the loss of the drugs, because that's the way to get into surrender, because you really need to surrender. And when you puncture the denial, then all the feelings come up. Shame, guilt, what I've done to my children or to my wife, the sadness, sorrow, anger, bitterness, fear, worry, and all those feelings that we don't want to feel. And also the feelings that is caused by the addiction, by the disease. And in all this, you have happiness and harmony and love and all the feelings that you really want, but they are clouded. So they come in darkness. And if you carry those feelings around, we're not doing anything about it, then you will surely relapse. And it also causes depression and negative thinking. So you're wandering around with like a bomb inside. And we have to take it. Anxiety, we take one feeling at a time. For some people, it's the sorrow, the sadness. For some people, it's the anger and the bitterness and the hate even. And for some people, it's the shame, the guilt as a mother, for example. And you really need to reach those levels, because otherwise you will drag it into your recovery, and you try to stay clean, you try to stay sober, but if you carry these feelings around, you will surely relapse. And for those who are relapsing over and over again, you really need to understand, what are they hiding? What are they denying? What are they not talking about? What haven't they been talking about on previous treatments? What haven't they been talking in previous therapy? We really need to, because they reach a point in their recovery, and those feelings that they are fleeing from or not addressing will make them take a relapse again. So it's our job to find out, what are they denying? What secret are they carrying around? What feelings can't they handle? What is it that is standing in the way? So it's our job as therapists or treatment centers and so on, find them, help them to dare to face those feelings and to break the denial, the emotional denial, and then they can stop relapsing. So this is so important. And sometimes I go to conferences and so on, and I don't understand why we don't talk so much about the psychology of addiction, because this is so important. If we really want to help them, help them to have so much trust in you and faith in the model or what you are doing, so they can trust you enough to open up and tell you, this is what I can't meet inside of myself, and break the emotional denial. And because otherwise, the disease, it uses it to bring them back. And if you understand this, that the disease part, the addictive personality, uses it to take you back to where it wants you. If you understand this, you're really on your way and into the solution. So the grief process and the denial process is almost exactly the same. It's the same stages. So first is pure denial. I call it pure denial. I don't know the word in English really, but it doesn't matter. It's pure denial, and it's a shock state. And many people, they come to us and say, no, I don't have a problem. It's my wife, it's their job. Everybody says I have a problem, but I don't have a problem. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a gambler. It's their problem. I don't have money enough for something else, but it's not, I don't have a problem. And they are stuck in that. But if you get through that, they start to get angry because they don't want to have the disease. And it's the same with death. It happened, you know, when the police comes in and say your child is dead, they hit them sometimes. And this is the same. As a counselor, we come with bad news for them. You have a disease, we call it addiction, we call it alcoholism, we call it gambling, and I don't want to have that disease. Of course they want to get angry. And it's like taking candy from kids. You don't want to lose it. You don't want to lose it. You want to keep it because it's your medicine. It's the best thing in the world that you know. So you don't want to lose it at all, and you want to keep it. So you're struggling, and you get angry. And I say sometimes to my patients and so on, don't shoot the messenger. Probably already someone has said that my shirt is too spotted, or I'm too bald, or whatever, just to withhold the truth from you. You understand? So, anger is sometimes the answer. And that's why family often, and also employers, they back off because the person really get hostile and said, I have no problem. Leave me alone. I know how to handle this. And people back off. And so they can, in secret, continue to drink or continue to take your drugs or whatever you do. Okay. So anger and also envy to other people that can drink or can gamble or can take drugs. So you get envious of your friends and to a lot of people around you. You can even pass a restaurant and, oh, there they are, those, you know, when you get angry and envious. But if you get through this, it's another level. But then you start to minimize. You explain, I haven't drinking so much as he has done. I'm not that big gambler. I just do a little bit on the internet. I'm just a poker player. I don't play those games that you lose all the time. This is a skill game. Or I take recreational drugs and they are not so dangerous. So I come with a lot of excuses. I also start to bargain. I bargain with the universe. I bargain with God. Oh, if you only take me out of this situation, I'm in jail, take me away. I don't want the sentence for 3 years for drug possession or whatever. You start to bargain. So you want to keep it. So bargaining is one of the things. Also, I hope, I pray that my child hasn't drowned in the Baltic Sea. I bargain with God, I bargain with life, I bargain with, so I just can take one drink at somewhere in the future, hopefully. I haven't given up really. I have one friend. He had a building company, he lost it all, and he was sitting in the park in Stockholm drinking from a bottle of vodka that he bought at the liquor store. And then some other guys were screaming in the background, and they said they were drinking liquor, with the moonshine, bad stuff, really. And he said, those are alcoholics. I'm not, because I bought mine. But I forgot one important thing, he said, is that I was living in bush number 7 in the park. But he was better. And then he didn't have to do anything about his problem. So it's tricky. I'm not like those guys in the square that are sitting and drinking, or the guys are standing around like this on heroin. I'm not that bad, because I'm drinking at home and snorting my cocaine in my beautiful condo or penthouse or big house. And I had millionaires, billionaires in treatment sitting in their wine cellar drinking wine and not coming anywhere. What's worse? It's the same disease. It affects people in the same way. It's no difference. It's a democratic disease. It doesn't judge, it just takes you wherever you are. So the next level in the denial process or the grief process is boredom. After a while it gets boring and people come into kind of depression. Certain drugs makes you depressed. Alcohol, but all addictions make you depressed after a while, because you do things against your values, you do things against the system, and your senses say, no, stop. And you continue anyway. You start to be a person that you can't stand for, so you get depressed after a while. You're living against your values, you're living against whatever you believe in. You start to be a person that you can't stand. You can't look yourself in the mirror because of guilt and shame and whatever you do. And all those feelings are coming, and you don't have any release anymore. We are taking away the best thing you know: gambling, drinking, drugging. Of course it's going to be depressed, because you compare the high with a normal life. After a while you can see and appreciate and being grateful for sunshine and the birds singing, the smell of your daughter's hair or whatever. But when you're in addiction, you don't see that. The only thing you're looking for is the high. So you get bored. And when people get bored, they know a way, if you're an addict, to come out of the boredom. So many relapses come in this stage. And we say to our patient, you really have to be persevere and be vigilant and continue, just do what you do, and you will come out on the other side. And the other side is grief and the sorrow. And you really need to meet that sorrow, because you're making a loss. Regular people, normal people, they don't understand that it's a really big loss when you lose the drugs, when you lose the gambling, when you lose the alcohol. And how can I grieve something, they ask me often. How can I grieve something that made my life so miserable? But it wasn't miserable from the beginning, right? No, it was fabulous. I was in another world. I was in my bubble. I loved it. Yes, of course. And the disease wants you to feel that way and romanticize and glorifying the drugs. So, but you have to feel the loss, because it's been your friend. And for some people, it's been more important than people. Because the disease or the drug or the gambling says, only you and me, come on, let's go in here. We don't need people. We can't trust them. They always, but you can trust me, you know. So, but you have to take divorce. You have to take out the divorce with the drugs, with the alcohol, the gambling. Because, or the sugar maybe. And it's harder sometimes to divorce that than your ex-wife or some other relationships. Before I met my previous wife, I had a big love. And she broke up with me when I was 20, 21 something. And she said, I don't want to be like my mother. You're partying too much, Michael. And I said, yeah. You know, I was a cocky young guy. I thought I was, you know, God sent or something to women. But anyway, she broke up. And I was devastated. And that grief wasn't anything compared to say goodbye to alcohol and drugs. Nothing. And when you understand this, and when you understand your patients, that they are grieving, and I can tell you, if the person, the patient you have in front of you are showing grief, then you're home. Because then they started the way to surrender, the way to say goodbye, the way to divorce from it. And after that, next step is coming, the sixth step. If you land in that, then you have surrendered that the drugs is not for me, they are stronger than me, and I wind up in acceptance of my disease. The acceptance is the key. What happens in the acceptance is that the obsession is gone. The cravings are more or less gone. And it's a sense of freedom. It's a sense of freedom that you, when you land in the acceptance, okay, I have a disease. I lost my child. I'm divorced now. And I take all those feelings in. It's over now. You don't have to struggle anymore. Before, in the process, is struggle. It's white-knuckled, as we say, soberness. But there is easy to be clean. It's easy to be sober. And actually you don't miss it so much anymore. The obsession is lifted. And for many patients this is a miracle. They said, wow, it's gone. I started when I was 12. And now I'm 31. This has been running my life. And suddenly it's just gone. For many people this is a miracle. They don't understand it. The obsession is lifted from me. And the key and the secret is the acceptance. But you have to grieve first. You can't jump from boredom or anger to acceptance. Sometimes you can go up and down in the beginning. Sometimes you're angry. Why do I have this disease? Oh, it's not fair, blah, blah, blah. And then you're in acceptance again. But you need really to stay there. And we work with the Minnesota model. We work in other ways too with the CBT and other stuff, and even psychodrama and stuff we include in our treatment. But in the 12-step program, they are talking about surrender. The first step, I'm powerless. Me against the disease is I'm powerless. And I also had to admit that I lost control completely in this area, but it's affected my whole life, my whole living. And most people after this, when we break the denial, or come behind the denial is a better word, I think, and we use all these kind of methods to come behind the denial, they feel free. And the quality of life has increased. The self-worth, self-esteem has increased. The level of personal freedom and joy has increased. And you can start be a good father again, a good mother again, you can be a good brother again, you can be a part of society in another sense, and you are there for the whole society. But we say you have to start in here. We have to start inside. We can't start anywhere else. So when we come through the emotional denial, they also come in contact with their own true self, their own true power, so to speak, because it's force here, it's power inside. And if you come in contact with that you lost yourself completely in your addiction or your alcoholism and so on. And when you really get in contact with yourself again, it's like it's charging a battery. And if the battery is charged, you don't have to use anything from the outside to change your inner self. You go from, I can't take any drugs because it makes my life a living hell, and you go to that I don't want to anymore, to I don't need to anymore. And when you come to that stage, you're willing to do anything to stay clean, to stay sober. And the willingness comes out of that. And when you get in contact with your own inner power, you don't have to use anything to change it. You don't have to use anything to change your feelings, because life is enough. Life is good enough. And you're high enough on smelling your daughter's hair, having fun with your wife, or go on a trip. And the fine thing is you will remember your trips too. So, with that said, I want to thank you for listening to me. And I want to talk more. So probably this is a series of lectures I want to give about the psychology of addiction. So this is only a small part of it. So thank you.